Oh, this is bright. Hello out there, my name is Warren. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking to you guys about the use of software and the risk, especially the financial risk, of using software. I've been in this software business for almost 2 decades, and the first thing I learned was that software is just not like moving a box product. It's not like just selling a car. We heard a lot about those these days. It's so much more complex than that. And one of the things that I encounter with a lot of customers is one specific question that I would like you to answer for me. It's a very simple question. And the question is, what is the difference between software and licenses? Nobody knows? Pardon? Yes, it is. What is the difference? Could you speak up a little bit? It's the next question. Oh my God, who pushed this button? Well, I usually describe it this way, that software is something that you can install, something that will run on a computer, and something that will work for you, will do some work for you. So that's fairly simple. If that's the case, what is a license? Well, a license is something that has been invented in the sales and marketing department of the manufacturer. It has got nothing to do with executables, it's just the right to use the software. So if you take, for instance, IBM, they have some nice products called Utility Storage Manager. It's one piece of software, but it can be sold in 4 different license types. It's because I forgot the last one. I only remember the 4 of them. So as long as we can set that straight, that there's a huge difference between what you actually buy from the company and what you use, we are on a good track. So the next question would be, how do you balance this? How do you balance the cost control? By that meaning, how do you avoid spending too much money without risking an audit that can be quite costly or even endangering your security? I'm not going to spend so much time on the security part, but mostly on the financial part. Does anybody have an idea on how to answer this question? What is the right software?
Needs assessment.
Pardon?
Needs assessment.
Yeah, probably. But also how to buy it, how to make sure that the software that you are actually running in your business and being utilized, that you're not buying more software than you actually need because somebody's having it installed, but it's not being utilized. That's a waste of money. Did I do that? Who's in charge of hardware and software here? I think I'll go for a drink in the meantime. I'm back on. Great. So, let me start out by giving you a historic perspective on why this is relevant. If we go back in time, there was a crisis starting in 2007 or 8 or somewhere in between. And that really made a lot of customers quite anxious to start new projects, invest in hardware and software. So what did that do to the manufacturers? They had promised their stockholders that they would deliver a lot of money, and certainly all of their pipeline died out. What did they do? Exactly, that's the right answer. They started doing audits. And nowadays, auditing is a dedicated business department at every software manufacturer in the world, at least the big ones. We do not have an audit department. So just to give you an example on how costly this can be, I found a story that is actually public. And it states that a company was asked to make a self-audit. They received a penance of $500,000 US. And apart from that, and that's quite a lot of money, they had to uninstall everything that wasn't licensed and buy it all over again. So I do not know the final figure, but the penance was the bigger part of it, I would say. So might have been a good idea just to buy the software from the beginning, but maybe they didn't know. One reason why people get caught up in this is because they do not really know what is installed. Do you know what you have installed in your companies? You do? Good. Because a lot of companies has never taken a stance on how should we handle software. Do we have a policy on how we should do this or not? So if you ask the IT managers, 51% will say we have an informal policy. What does that mean? I think I know what we should be doing, but I haven't communicated it. Worst part is that 14% said, I don't know. No, we don't. I've never had a clue to how to do this. Haven't given it a thought. Do you have policies on how to use software? Let me rephrase that question. How many of you, by raise of hand, has a policy of how to use software? Now I have to go out here and see if there are any hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, a handful. That's pretty good. What happens if you do not have taken any consideration about this is people will do what they like to do. So if we have a written policy, only 28% of the employees say, I will once in a while do something that I'm not allowed to. But if you do not have a written policy, the amount doubles. So what does this mean to the company? Basically, it means we have no control of what is installed. This is not something that I have invented. This is from BSA, Business Software Alliance. That is Microsoft, IBM, all the other major vendors. They have made a coffee club where you can, well, go ask for advice if you like. Okay. So what does this mean today? I started out by talking about the crisis in 2007 and 8. Where are we today? In a global audit reporting, 63% of companies reported that they had an audit within the last 2 years. Only 17% said that they have never been audited. Maybe not in that many years' time, or maybe they really haven't. But 37% says that they have been audited more than once, maybe even 3 times. And 25% uses a spreadsheet to control their assets. How do you control your software assets? Are you using a spreadsheet? Do you have a tool for doing so? Or have you fallen asleep? I'll take that as a something. If you should find out who you should be afraid of, our friends Microsoft are by far the top-ranking auditor in the world. Would they ever come knock on your door? Well, if you look at the world, you will see that Eastern and Central Europe is the second highest rate of unlicensed software. Does that surprise anybody here? Pardon? No? Why not? I think you do some great tech stuff. I heard that you are one of the best companies in Europe, or countries in Europe, for IT. But I learned when I was about to make this presentation that in Latvia, right here where we are, things look like this. These are public data, I've been told. I haven't really checked them out. But I think it's rather interesting that maybe 85% are using something that is installed by accident. I also think that it's very interesting that within the last 3 years, there has been 100 criminal cases here in Latvia. It's really rare in Western Europe, where I come from, that something like that actually reaches the court. In most cases, companies make a settlement and just grab deep in their pockets and pay to the manufacturer. Story actually goes that in some countries in Western Europe, about 20% of the total revenue of some of these vendors is generated by audits. Is that a lot of money? No? Okay, I'll skip to the next slide. No need to talk more about this. Are you sure? I think it's a lot of money. Yeah, divided with 100 is still a substantial amount of money. So, one reason for this, and this is a story that I am personally involved in. I visited a company, local branch of an international business. They were very professional. I even had to show a blank criminal record to get into their data center. No problem. They used a great tool for deployment. They were really good at doing AD. So after doing a scan, how many pages, A4 size, of single installations, not 5 installations of one program, but one installation of one program, how many pages did I come up with? Any guesses? Let us put it this way, the CIO at the company was really baffled when I showed him this, and that was only one installation. Then there were installations with a count of 2, 3, and 4, and this guy had promised me I wouldn't find a thing going into his business. He was really scared. How many single installations do you have in your companies, you think? You are a very quiet audience. So, use rights. How may you use the software? What happens, for instance, if Windows Server goes from CPU-based to core-based? How will that influence your licensing? What if you move software from one server to another? Some software is actually licensed if you use it for commercial purposes, while free for private persons. Could be WinZip, for instance. How do you handle that? Do you even have the resources to understand all of this within your company? Or do you just go by doing this? How many of you have ever written all the licensing details before you press I agree? Let me see hands. I don't trust you. Can you remember which one?
I can tell you.
Ah, never mind. So, my suggestion to you is that if you can't answer very positively to all of these statements, are you in control of what is installed, what use rights you have, and how to use it? Maybe you should just stick to what you're good at. Because I know that within these walls there are a company, actually our hosts, that are very good at licensing. And depending on your size, your maturity, they have different solutions that you can choose from. If you have had any questions to what I have said so far, I would recommend that you come talk to me or talk to one of the SQUALIO guys or girls to see what this is about. Short story on me, 3 seconds. We were founded in 2008. We've been doing this for quite some time. We're situated in Copenhagen, Denmark. We have offices around Europe, also in the States. We have a bunch of resellers, SQUALIO for once. We have an OEM agreement with Dell, for instance, which are represented in a lot of countries. And our market focus is basically where you are. Any questions?
Actually, I do.
Yeah.
The fact that you didn't believe me, I can explain, but I'll do that later. But I wonder, if you had told us from the beginning what License Watch does, because it sounds a bit like police or, I don't know, somebody who does the audit. So maybe you would have got more answers on your questions about the licenses. So what does License Watch actually do?
Well, we deliver tools for you to make sure that you have the right licenses to cover your installations, keep track of everything you do, including usage. I'm not here to sell you anything, so please come ask questions. We have SQUALIO as our partner in this region, so that's why I'm not elaborating too much on the sales pitch.
Fair enough. I mean, can you give us a little sales pitch still? I mean, imagine really small company, few employees. Would it still be worth looking at a tool like yours,
well,
like you're offering? I'm sure you have more than one.
It depends quite a lot on your size, the kind of software you're using, and your need for risk mitigation, or to save money if you like. It also revolves back to security. Whatever you install is a security risk unless you control it. So it's all up to the individual company to find out how much is this worth, because it is worth something. It will not be worth hiring a person full-time to control your assets. You should go and find a good partner to help you do that.
What's the funniest piece of software you've ever found?
By funny, do you mean funny the good way or the bad way?
Well, both legal and illegal stuff, if that's your question.
Well, our favorite is Microsoft SQL. They have a track record of making it quite difficult to identify their product. This is really fun whenever they do a new release.
You meaning unlicensed copies of SQL?
Well, just determining which edition and version it is can be quite tricky. We need to investigate at least 3 sources of data to determine this. On the other side, if we should take a more serious matter, it would be a product like Dropbox, used by many, but it gives the security risk that any information that you have in your company, if that is shared on Dropbox, which is for private, you have no control of where your information goes. We cannot detect whether it's for business or personal, but we can help you anyway. So if you need to gain control of things like that, come talk to us.
All right, another question. What about open source?
Well, we do some open source, but it's not our favorite. We stay within what is licensed. This is what costs you money.
So is it free and license-less is the question, I guess.
Pardon?
Is it free and license-less is the question.
Our product? No.
Yours isn't.
No.
What about tracking the other open source software? I guess that's the question. How about having it?
We do some tracking, but as I said, we are mainly focused on what costs money, because we would like to make some savings, and we would like to help you mitigate risk.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience above Slido? Yes? No? Okay, let's move on. Thank you so much. Let's give you a hand. Oh, sure. Thank you for sitting in front. Go ahead. Do we have a mic? Just a sec. Can you do this again? We actually have a mic so that people hear you. It's on.
Okay. Keeping track of software license usage and keeping an eye on how things are changing. It's keeping the data aligned and structuring the information you have in a company. So besides mitigating the risk, could you comment on the real experience, how companies are benefiting from actually knowing what they have and making maybe a better negotiation process with license resellers, or tracking the usage and actually making smarter decisions about which tools to give. So more on the value side, not so much on the risk side.
Please identify yourself as well.
My name is Artur Slazdekans. I'm one of the SQUALIOs, how to say.
Okay, SQUALIO guys.
A geek.
Thank you.
Oh,
A geek? I don't think so.
That is a very long question with a very long answer. If I may make a comparison, we heard about company cars before. If you have company cars, you will know what car it is, when it was bought, how long it's been running, who's driving it, what color it has, how much gas it spends, because that's an asset that's very tangible. Software is also an asset. It's quite not as tangible, but if you really want to exercise a good asset management, you can get basically the same benefits as with a car. Like, why leave it in the parking lot if somebody else can utilize it? If you want to standardize on a specific piece of software instead of using 5 different pieces of software doing the same, can you get a better price? If you enter into a renegotiation or renewal of a contract in general, or buying something new, the better position you have by knowing what you need and what you have, the better you will be positioned to get from the meeting what you want. So it's kind of like if you are going into an audit in general with your company, how much money did you make, how much did you spend? The better prepared you are for that, the better you will come out. Does that answer your question? As short as I could.
I realize my questions relating to IT can be a bit childish, but can you also identify whether I'm actually using the right software for my needs?
No, but I can help you find out what you're using.
Okay.
And based on that, if you take it to the higher level of being mature in software asset management, this can be a strategic tool for finding out what you should do in the future.
Okay.
Microsoft operates with 4 maturity models. The ISO standard does the same. They're not the same, but they have 4 levels. The higher you go, the better decisions you make.
Thank you, Vaughn.
My pleasure.
Let's give a hand to Vaughn.